Welcome to our first video podcast. We're sitting down with Karen and Dodge Manning from Mendoran in central west New South Wales. We had the chance to head out to their property late last year and record this episode. Their story starts as 18-year-olds who met at Ag College. Their first date, well, they headed to McDonald's, might have run out of fuel, and since then their lives have never been boring. Jamie travelled Australia and the US as a professional bull rider. He even broke a Guinness World Record with a broken neck. Their story, though, really came into its own on the 27th of March in 2014. Jamie was heading home from working at the Dubbo sale yards when a truck ran him off the road. His ute hit a tree and burst into flames. Following this was months and years of surgeries, in and out of hospital, and an amputation to his left arm and his left leg. As you'll hear though, this story is full of love, life, and I think these two define the word resilience. I hope you guys enjoy this story as much as I did. It was truly a privilege to sit down with Jamie and Karen, get to know them a little bit more, see their property, and just hear their story, which is truly remarkable. Enjoy. Welcome, Karen and Jamie, to the Humans of Agriculture podcast, and thank you for having us in your beautiful garden here.
Thanks, Ollie. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you.
Would love to just start off. Obviously, you two have known each other for a long time, and you met back when you were 18. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you two met and where it was?
I went to Ag College together. So I did 2 years there, and Karen come in on my second year. So she was a year below me. But I don't know, it was that attraction. I don't know, something just had to meet her and went from there.
Do you remember the first meeting, Karen?
I don't think I do. So you told me about it later.
The first date I took her out on, we went to McDonald's.
Yeah.
The old Holden ute I had. And so I went down to Maitland in the main street, had to get fuel. So I went to the bank, and as I parked in the gutter, the ute's on a slant. So all the fuel went to one side, ran out of fuel. First date, still here.
Remember, was that the starting block for your relationship for both of you, that it wasn't going to be straightforward, it was always going to be a bit of a laugh?
Smooth sailing, no. No, you wouldn't expect.
Tell me a little bit more about Ag College. What were you guys studying? And
So it was just the certificate in agriculture. I think you did the advanced ticket, didn't you?
No, you did.
I did. Certificate in agriculture anyway, yeah. So just general running farms, bookkeeping, that sort of thing.
Tell me a little bit more, Jamie, whereabouts you grew up.
So I grew up in Scone, Hunter Valley,
Yep.
In town. Avid sportsman. My father actually had a sports store, so I played any sport going in Scone. And when I was about 12 or 13, my sister's boyfriend got hold of me and took me up on there. They had a farm, and from there I just fell in love with the farm life, rural life, and that was what I was going to do. But as I progressed, got a bit older, I had the opportunity to go to Brisbane, do a jockey apprenticeship. And I was always wanting to be the bigger man, not the little jockey.
Yeah.
There's no way I was going to do that. I had a chance to go to Sydney and play football, but just had that love for the land.
Yeah, wow, it's quite a pull to kind of have that choice between chasing the sport.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be here now, would I?
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know what it is, just the cattle. I just love cattle and horses and dogs, and it's just what I was going to do.
And what about you, Karen? Where was your childhood?
Yeah, I grew up at Jervis Bay, down the south coast, so something totally different from here. But my parents' best friends had a farm in Kangaroo Valley, and that's where I got the love of the land from, and just wanted to be out on, work in that space. So, yeah, that's what led me to Ag College, and I guess sealed my fate.
Was there like anything else that you ever wanted to do in terms of career-wise or after you finished school? What were the dreams of a younger Karen?
Yeah, it was just always just wanted to work with cattle, really. Cattle and horses, and that was it.
And so that love of cattle led you to finding yourself a bull rider.
Yeah.
She found me before that.
Oh, so that was afterwards?
No.
Well, I was just getting started in rodeos.
Tell me a little bit more about that rodeo side of things. like, for our listeners, can you tell us a bit more about that bull riding and how someone falls into that path?
Don't really know. The way I got into it was when I was at college, a couple of mates said, let's go to the local rodeo, get on a steer. And to me it was like, what's that as such, you know? I'd never experienced that before. So we went to the rodeo and just fell in love with it. And probably got on about 4 steers and then decided, no, I want something better, so I decided to get on bulls. And just went from there. I don't know, it's just that challenge, man versus beast. The camaraderie, your mateship that goes along with it.
So was it from that very first moment at that rodeo that love was sparked? Or did it take
Yeah, no, it was pretty much that first one.
a bit like your first date at McDonald's?
A bit like when I saw her walking through college.
And what about for you, Karen? Did you end up following Jamie around the rodeo circuits, or did you steer clear for a little while?
No, I think I followed him around, and like we got to experience a lot of Australia that way by travelling and sort of seeing a lot of sites or places we probably wouldn't have normally gone if it wasn't for going to that little rodeo somewhere.
I burnt her out. The last sort of 5 years I was off on my own. She had kids, I suppose, too, but she was sick of travelling too.
Oh, it just made it a lot more difficult when you had kids and, you know, animals that, you know, someone's got to stay home and feed the animals and look after the kids.
So where did that time after uni take you both? And yeah, what careers were you both chasing?
So I went back to Scone. I was working when my sister's boyfriend got hold of me. He actually worked on another farm as well as his own, and I actually got a job at the place he was working on. It was around Scone. I was there and then I moved to the same people, but up the back of Singleton. I was there for about 2 years all up. Then moved onto another farm in Scone, and then eventually went contract fencing, a bit of contract mustering.
Yep.
And then from there we sort of bought our own place, own farm. Had it for a couple of years, and then it was drought hit. It was getting pretty tough, so we decided to get out, and that's where we've ended up here now.
And what about for you, Karen, during that time?
Yeah, I worked on a property between Malali and Tambar Springs where they produced commercial Angus bulls. So I had a really nice herd up there, so I loved that life, and I guess I had to leave it a little bit behind when we got married and thought, well, I better live with my husband then at that point. So, yeah, I moved to Scone when we got married and did a bit of work in the dairy industry, and then we had our own places and worked around there, and since then I've gone more into the area of mental health. So I worked for New South Wales Health in the rural team, so going out and visiting farmers and checking in on their mental health.
Tell me about that, because there might be some people in a similar situation where you met someone really young. So you guys actually split in terms of you to set up your own career while still being together and chase those dreams before coming back together. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and look, there were times where Jamie would actually go to the States for 6 months at a time just to pursue his bull riding stuff, and I would keep things together at home, I guess.
Home and feed the puppies.
Tell me about the decision to. I think a lot of young people in agriculture, the dream is to own your own farm. You guys obviously achieved that at a fairly young age and then made the decision to sell.
It's always been my dream, I think Karen's too, to have our own farm and be farmers, beef producers. It's just been a big cycle where we went right through the drought and got to the stage where if we didn't get out, we're going to lose everything. So we decided to get out while we can. Had enough money to buy this place. There's only a little farm here, 100 acres. But now we're getting stable, starting to build cattle numbers up again, just on adjustment country. So it's been a big cycle back to the first goal 30 years ago.
Behind the scenes of that, have you found that there's kind of been this evolution that maybe owning the country isn't the pinnacle? You can still be farmers and run your business without having to...
Yeah. I mean, ideally, to have your own farm would be lovely, but adjustment, you'd have to check fences, spray burrs, water, anything.
Yeah.
If it gets dry, you can just pick your cattle up and move. You can't do that with, find a bit of area where it's a bit wetter and, yeah.
And the bull riding piece, I didn't actually realise that you'd headed over to the States. So it wasn't just a side hustle. This was the real thing. You were chasing the buckles across the world.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, but once I got over there, I realised how strong the competition was over there. But I don't regret it. Actually, one thing I probably do regret is spending so much time away from Karen doing it.
Yep.
Especially now, the position we're in. But yeah.
Tell me about the rodeo scene over there.
I lived with a contractor. He had bulls, so we were away sort of 3-4 times a week, just all over Texas mainly, rodeoing. Up in went to New York a couple of times, and
Yeah, wow.
but you get on a plane and you fly, a couple of states away, and turn around, go back home, pack up for the next one.
Was it everything that you imagined?
Bright lights, big crowds. It's the place to be.
Yeah, wow. Did you get over there, Karen?
I've been over there once, yeah.
And you followed Jamie around the circuit over there?
Yeah, I think it was 6 weeks, and yeah, did a bit of a run with him, and yeah, it was great.
It's incredible. And when you came back to Australia, were you still pursuing the rodeo career at that stage?
I was, but I sort of, after the second time I was over there, I was sort of getting a bit long in the tooth. Just couldn't give it up, but wanted to give it one last ditch effort. So that's why I went back the third time.
Yeah.
Actually got busted up pretty bad, and that forced me to come home.
What was the accident that forced you home?
So I punched my lungs, got jumped on, punched my lungs, broke some ribs.
And that wasn't just the only accident you'd had during your...
I've been pretty lucky, actually.
I'm looking at Karen, she's shaking her head.
As hard as this is to believe, Jamie in his entire life has never had an injury where he needs plaster. Oh, well, no, you can't
foot.
say.
A foot.
Well, you've broken a lot of bones,
Cut my
just
neck.
none that require plaster.
or
If you're
ones that...
talking about, spines and, all those sort of ribs and that sort of thing. But I put it down similar to, I don't know, it's an addiction, whether he would sort of, that's it, I'm giving up, and then I'd sit with him for a while and he's like, okay, I'm just going to do this rodeo, and if I don't do well, that's it, that's I'm done for good this time. And then he'd go and win it, and it was like, okay, here we go again.
Just enough to keep you...
Yeah, it's that, I just need one last hit and then I'll be done. And yeah, I sort of joke that there was actually nothing wrong with his left leg and his left hand. I just had the doctors amputate them to make sure he would stop bull riding, because he was still he was out with an injury when he had his car accident, but he was still,
I was 39, and my goal was to get to 40. That was just, got to have goals in life, and that was my goal, to get to 40. Still riding bulls at the ultimate level in Australia.
Yep.
And
yeah,
done me wrong.
at that time there was an over 40s league sort of going there, and he's like, they were saying, oh, come on, you're almost 40, can you ride in that? And he's like, no, I'm not 40.
Not giving up. In terms of injuries, there were a few along the way, and one that has a fair story behind it. Something about a neck brace and taking the neck brace off to appear on Channel 7 one morning.
As coincidence happened, I was in Sydney show riding for the state and for Australia, actually. Broke my neck, got thrown off the wall, broke my neck, and then I've gone back to the medical assistants, I won't say what it was, but they said, oh, it's fine, you just damaged your nerve. So he said, sit there for half hour and cool down. So I've cooled down, and he set me off. And 12 months to the day, the same Rodeo Sydney show, I was down there again. I got thrown off a bull pretty bad, and actually broke the vertebrae, snapped one off and fractured the other. But while I was there, they'd seen the old fracture from the year before. So I actually fractured my neck the year before. Lucky, like.
Yeah, the second time he did end up in intensive care because he was knocked out for a long time. Where a lot of people go, oh, I wasn't there at the time, and yeah, a lot of people said they thought he was actually dead, like he didn't wake up until he was at the hospital and he was in intensive care, and he was put into an induced coma, and they thought he had pretty serious head injuries. So, but I think you were maybe talking about the year before when he first hurt his neck a little bit. and then was asked to do.
So I was down there and I broke my neck, had the neck brace on, and Channel 7 rang up. They said, wondering if you're interested in attempting the Guinness World Records. I'd never been on mechanical bulls, so it was a Guinness World Record for the longest time on a mechanical bull. Yeah. I'd been on a couple, but not many. I said, yeah, sure, I'm down here now, why not? So I rang Karen up, I said, look, you better come down to Sydney. We're going to go to the studio, Channel 7, and attempt this Guinness World Record. She's like, you can't, you got a broken neck? No, it'll be fine. So she picks me up and we go to the studio, pull up in the car park. I said, just hang on a minute. So I pulled the neck brace off, shuffled inside, and I had 3 attempts on the first day, just a practice day. And I was just falling off for like 4 seconds. And the producer, I'm sure they're scratching their head going, what have we done here?
Yeah.
No, this is not going to be good.
And maybe we should mention you couldn't feel one half of your body.
It's all numb, yeah. So I said, no, look, it'll be fine. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll do the recording. I'll smash it. Hoping I would. Anyway, the next day, yeah, we managed to hang on.
What changed between the day before and then?
I suppose the cameras
Yeah.
had to perform. Yeah.
Put a show on, you reckon?
I guess.
What were you thinking sitting there watching him, Karen?
Yeah, I didn't know what to think. I was just, I guess, hoping for the best. And I think that world record still is current. Yeah, it still stands.
Funny thing was when I actually checked myself out of hospital, and they said, you can't sign yourself out. I said, no, look, I've had enough injuries over the years. I know my body. I think I'm right. Like, I'll go easy. I'll be right. And they said, no, you can't do that. I said, well, surely there's a bit of paper I can sign so you're not liable. Let me go. So eventually I talked them into it and I've signed this paper and I've walked out of the hospital with my brand new boots that I bought the day before, new riding boots. Luckily I didn't cut them off. I had a mate there and said, you're not cutting those boots off, they're brand new. So I had them under my shoulder. I think I had my hat on and a hospital gown. No bare feet, nothing.
And because I was we had a property at Polywar at the time and I was up there looking after that and though the hospital was ringing me and I'm like, I can't control things from up here. And he rocked up at the entrance, got a taxi back to the entrance of the Sydney Showground in his hospital gown with his boots tucked under his arm and, ringing up someone to say, can you come to the front gate and pay for this taxi?
So anyway, as I've got in there, because I wanted to go and watch the whole thing in my head was I wanted to go and watch the last round of the Bulls.
Yeah.
So I got there just in time to watch the last round of the Bulls, and then after the rodeo, you all go to the members' bar. Yeah. Anyway, sitting at the members' bar, and I was starting to feel all right. Probably the medication had me on, couldn't feel anything. Had a couple of beers and looked up, and he's high five. The kids.
Yeah.
They're over there, so I started dancing with them, with his neck brace on, and
always a larrikin.
well. Bit of alcohol,
Yeah. One last thing around the bull riding. It is an elite sport when you look at not just for the animal but the people on top of it. So you mentioned that you were trying to get to 40. What's it like as a sports person? Like in your head, you're still fully capable, but maybe your body's starting to let you down. What was that decline like where you're still, mentally capable of performing at the top level?
Once there, you just haven't got that reflex. Just a bit slower, and when you hit the ground, it takes a bit of getting up at sometimes. And the recovery's a bit slower too.
Yeah.
But I always worked, when I was riding, I always worked 5-6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always fit that way. But I suppose when you get a bit older too, you slow up a little bit and don't do as much strenuous work as you should.
Choose wisely or work smarter, they reckon.
That's it, work smarter. But actually, I think going back, I think with my accident, the rodeo side's helped me a bunch. Just that mentally tough. There's a goal in front of you. Let's go and chase it. Let's do it.
So tell me a little bit more about the accident, what you're doing at the time.
So I've been in the sale yards working. Been 2 big years. We were smashing records in there. Like one day we had 10,000 cattle.
Wow.
Which is pretty big for in here at Dubbo, where they used to average 5,500. Must have been the drought, was it? Yeah. To have so many cattle come in. Must have been a dry time. But so I was coming home and obviously didn't make it home.
Yeah.
Collided with a tree just up the road here, and the car caught a light, and because he hit the tree, the motor had come back on my lap, and I was trapped in the car. And then I was sort of in and out of consciousness. But I do remember waking up and the fire was burning inside the centre console. So I had my seatbelt on. I got struggling, couldn't get out, and I got to the stage, well, you know, if I don't get the seatbelt off, I'm going to die. So it's that mentally toughness, you know, put your hand in the fire and I'm getting out no matter what, which is what I'm going back to, what Rodeo, I think, helped me get through that.
So you remember those moments trapped inside the car?
Remember certain parts where I was conscious.
Yeah.
And I remember the neighbour that lives up the road here that pulled me out. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here now. Big man, strong enough to pull me out. I got the stage at one stage. I said, mate, if you don't leave me here, you're going to die. The car's going to blow up. You'll die with me. He said, no, he said, I'm staying with you. And that's, to me, that's, for someone to say that, and his wife was beside him.
Yeah.
And she was 9 months pregnant, just about to drop. She's running around fire extinguishers, and so they were prepared to give everything up just to get me out.
What does that mean to you now, looking back?
Oh, it's a bunch, yeah.
And
Touches.
whereabouts were you that night, Karen?
I was actually here. So I had sent Jamie a couple of text messages and tried to ring, and I couldn't get him on either of his phones. And it was sort of funny, a friend from town had sort of rang me up, and it's sort of someone I don't really speak to that often, but she'd said, oh, I just needed to know you guys are okay. She said there was a couple of emergency vehicles going past, and I just had a feeling. I'm like, well, I think we are. I can't get a hold of, Dodge, but, I haven't seen him go past here. And anyway, I had just a quick chat to her, and I said, oh, well, I better go and try and track him down. And, it was dinner time. I had dinner almost on the table, and I just sort of sat down and I thought, I don't know, I just can't even explain the fact that I knew something had happened to him. It was just, and I said to the kids, just sit here and eat your dinner. I'll be back soon. I'm going for a drive. And it's that funny thing where I don't even know where the feeling come from. And it didn't even cross my mind that he was down helping with an accident. I just knew something had happened to him. And it was actually only 3.5 kilometres from our house where the accident happened, and sort of go up, down, it's a bit of a rise, and as I sort of go over the rise, I could just see flames racing up a tree, and cars pulled over, and I pulled over there and walked down, and I could see he'd made the dog box for the back of his ute, so I knew it was his. It was like a custom-made one, and I could see the silhouette, the shape of that. And I knew that was his ute, and at the time there was 2 police officers standing on the road, and there was no one else there. There was no ambulance, there was no fire brigade, and I actually stood there and thought he was still in that vehicle. And, your legs do just go out from underneath you, and I kind of thought we were just, basically watching the last of Jamie disappear, I guess. Yeah. And then, I guess someone came up and said to me, oh, you can't sit on the road. And I thought, what a weird thing to say. And they said, oh, no, he's the ambulance is actually taking him to Dubbo. He's alive. He's not real well, but he has been he's no longer in the vehicle. So I'm like, okay. For me, it was an incredibly hard moment, but I look back and think it was probably one of the best things that could have happened, because everything from that point was up. It was better. It was, it showed me how bad it could get. And, it didn't get that bad again, sort of thing. And
did you tell what happened from there? You headed into Dubbo, or did you come back to the kids?
I went into the hospital, and it was actually my friend that had called me up to sort of check that we were okay. She's actually, I have to pass her house on the way there, and I gave her a call. I gave one of my neighbours a call and said, can you come over and look after my kids? And And then I rang her and I said, can I pick you up on the way into Dubbo? It was Dodge, and she's a nurse, so I thought what better support to have at a hospital. So she came in with me, and we went into the hospital, and I sort of had to sit around for a little bit before I could go in and see him. And I went in there, and I guess it was very overwhelming by that time. He was intubated, and they were waiting for a retrieval team to be sent from Sydney, and they let me know he was not in a good way. And when I walked into the bay in triage, they sort of seen him there, and I took everything in, and I thought, I don't know, it was just another sense that went, go around. And there was a bit of a story behind Jamie and his wedding rings. He's, I don't know whether he's just throwing them away on purpose or he's telling me he's accidentally losing them.
Truth's coming out.
Yeah, like a few years before that, I think it was our 13th wedding anniversary. We're away, and I think it's the only family vacation we've ever been on. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to get a new wedding ring," and I'm like, "I don't know about this. You just seem to keep just throwing them away." And he said, "No, I promise I won't lose this one. I'm going to get it tattooed on my finger." And I said, "Okay, you sure? That's a big commitment, a tattoo." He's like, "No, I'm sure." And I'm like, "Okay, if you lose this one, this time it is over. It's, I know you're just not throwing away on purpose if you get rid of this one." And so that evening when I walked into the hospital room, there was just something telling me, go and have a look at, and see if that wedding ring is still there on his finger. And it was on his left hand. It had gotten the brunt of the fire, been sitting in the fire, and it was black. His whole hand was black and charcoaled, except for there was this one band around where his wedding ring goes that was untouched, so I could just see that tattoo really distinct. And
I actually remember sitting in the car burning, and I thought, shit, Karen said she's going to leave me if I lose this ring. So I put my thumb over like that, and I'd pass out, and I'd come to, and got the stage where I actually put my hand like this, because these were my life, that's where I made my money out of my hands, and the wedding ring, but she's all hidden. And it's funny how when you're in certain situations, how those little things come up, like a critical incident like that, and I'm worried about a wedding ring.
Yeah, but for me it was a sign, we've got this, he's not gone, he's sort of, this isn't over. And from there, they had a retrieval team flew up from Sydney, and it's a team of, amazing doctors that came up and sort of got him ready there in Dubbo, and it was probably close to midnight, 1 o'clock by the time they left Dubbo. But while we were in the hospital, they kept on asking me about flying to Sydney with him, and I don't know, I was just really insistent that I wouldn't fly down with him. They're like, we need to know at this point, this is your last opportunity. And they were sort of pulling my friend aside and saying, you've got to get her on this plane because she's going to regret not being there when he dies. If she doesn't get on the plane, she's not going to be there in that moment, and she'll regret it for the rest of her life. And for me, I just had going through my mind, he wouldn't dare die without me being there. So me not being there will keep him alive. He'll keep fighting until I actually get to Sydney. And, and I thought if he's in Sydney, that's his best place of survival. So for me, it was like I couldn't get on that plane because I had to make sure he kept fighting until I was back there with him and they could take over. So, yeah.
What does blow my mind is they flew me down by aeroplane, got in a helicopter, and they landed on top of the hospital. So I went straight to emergency. How many doctors was in the room?
We
like
were
17 doctors, or
I guess we did it.
Doctors in that room, they all had their own job, like the legs and the burns and.
We did a medical conference that we're asked to by Royal North Shore guys to sort of share our story, and I guess it gave time to reflect. There was one of the surgeons that looked after Jamie, and he did a bit of a spiel before we did, and he sort of gave the run through of what was going on there medically for Jamie, and he said that first time they took him into surgery, there was it 37 or 38 doctors, and that's doctors alone, not all the nurses and everything else that worked on him in that first operation, because he had he had a broken back, he had all his burns, he had significant head injuries to the point where the team that was looking after his head was sort of saying to the other doctors, I really don't think this is viable. He's going to have no quality of life with the amount of brain damage he's going to suffer. So really maybe think about basically cutting your losses here. There was concerns that because of the fire he would be blind because his eyelids were all burnt off, the damage to his lungs, he had internal injuries, 40% burns, I think. Look, it was such an extensive list of, that's why so many doctors had to be in there treating all their, special sections, and
Tell me, well, I just think both of you are absolutely incredible, just the power of you to, kind of instill that real hope at that time that things are going to be okay, and that, you'd keep fighting because Karen wasn't there. In terms of, I've only ever spoken with one other person, a young guy who had an accident and suffered burns as well, but that moment when you look at yourself for the first time in a mirror, where that was, what was that moment like?
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't think I was that bad. I remember I had my burns nurse used to come in every morning, and she'd stretch my skin out because it's starting to shrink, being burnt. But I said to her one day, I said, how bad's my face? Is it just here that's burnt? She went, Jamie, your whole face is burnt. I could look in the mirror and I just couldn't see it. But the medication I was on or what, I don't know, but whether it's just you don't want to believe what you're seeing. Yeah. It wasn't until she actually said your whole face is burnt, I actually had a look and I went, oh. That took a bit of getting over. As far as my appearance, we used to get out. So I used to get out on days. So Karen would take me down to the supermarket. And I used to hate that because the people they'd stare at you. I mean, it's understandable to see me burnt in the wheelchair and one arm, one leg. But that took a bit of getting used to.
Tell me about that, because that's something I'm interested in. Obviously, you're still the exact same person on the inside, but this perception that because physically and visually there was something different about you. What is it that, I guess, around that of, people's perceptions of essentially it's judging a book by its cover. What frustrated you about that at that time?
Just, I don't know, just people staring at you, and what really did get to me was a few people said, you'll never work again, you'll never ride horses again, and that really drove me. I remember being in hospital, and it was just like, it's a big nightmare. I want this nightmare to end. So I've got to get back to work, get back home, get back to living, get back to the family. And that's what got me through there, just that's what I was going to do, right or wrong.
And you accelerated it pretty well, didn't you? You kept the doctors and the physios on their toes.
Yeah, they were good. Ironically, the main doctor, his name was Dr. Char, been a burns victim, and it was a bit of a joke with him.
And then you set yourself a big goal off the back of it. You not only just to get on a horse, it was to do a pretty decent ride from out the back of Tilpa, wasn't it?
Well, when I got home, I decided 12 months after the accident, so the 27th of March was the accident, 27th of March the following year, 2015, I was going to ride a horse. So I did. 2 days before that, it was killing me. Let's get this horse. No, wait. So I only rode just around the house here. And then I was talking to Karen one day, I said, now that my operations and everything have started to slow a little bit, how about we go away on a holiday? I was like, well, what are we going to do, go to Sydney? We've been there for 3 months or whatever, and 4 months. So we decided to load the horses up and we're going to go out west and just go for a ride. At the same time, Channel 9 rang up, and they'd been talking to one of my doctors, and had this show lined up called what's it called?
This time next year.
Next year, yeah. Which is all about setting a goal, give yourself 12 months to reach that goal. So we thought, well, this is what we're planning on doing, having a holiday with the horses. How about we...
I think they initially wanted to do a story on Jamie about his recovery, and he was going through stages of getting a nose because his nose was burnt off, and it was this, like, you had to be dedicated to this, like, or basically getting a new one done. It was in operations every second week, major operations, and they're like, oh, well, that would be really good if we could maybe say how far you come in your recovery over the next 12 months. And he's like, oh, no, sorry, I don't have time to do that. I'm doing this other thing, and, like, we're riding from Tilpa back to Dubbo and trying to raise money for amputees. And they're like, so sorry, we don't have time for your show. I'm like, okay.
So that was part of it too, like to give back, you know, to prove to other people, no matter what your situation is, you can still achieve. So we decided to donate to amputees, raise money.
It's an interesting one, and it's something, like, feel free not to answer it, but you were working during all of this in Karen, then, like, it was extensive periods of time. Were you both out of work? Like, you're doing this ride to raise money for other people. Like, how were you guys getting on financially at this stage?
I was very lucky. The rodeo community is a real tight-knit community. And back at Scone, real tight-knit community. And my work in here at Dubbo, at the sale yards, is a real tight-knit community. Everyone gets in and helps each other when people are down. So there's three good friends of ours. They actually organised an auction over at Scone. And all the rodeo people come along, and Scone people and whoever wanted to come. And they raised a bit of money. It was enough to we'd keep it home. You know, we still owed money on it. And there's people, the sale yards, truck drivers donated money, and just enough to get us through, you know, until I can get back to work.
Yeah.
Well, I was never going to work again. It was always, you go on the disabled pension. But I always wanted to give back, you know, and pay my way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was obviously got us until I could get back to work again.
I guess it's setting that example for our children too, that, you know, getting on with life and getting back and contributing. And I guess a lot of people have this dream, wow, what would actually happen if I didn't have to work? And we all think about it. But then it's a little bit different when the choice is taken away from you and suddenly someone says you can't work anymore. And how you see yourself.
Yeah, like Karen just said, people say you can't work again. It's like driving a knife in you. No, you won't do that to me. This is what I want to do.
With someone who is so, like you, who built their life around work and being, as you said, being able to use your hands, did you lose touch of kind of who you were at the core?
No, because I had in my mind that I'm going back to work no matter what. And I was going to go back to do what I was doing before.
Yeah.
So that was, there's no option there for me.
He's pretty stubborn.
Yeah.
I mean, I love work. I always have. People think I'm mad probably by saying that, but it's achieving something, you know, like building a fence or something. You can see the end product, you know.
I think there was a big push for us to sell, you know, even though we've only got a small farm, but we, you know, people just said you've got to sell it. You've got to move somewhere to a cold climate. You've got to either move to Orange or the Blue Mountains, and you know, because you won't be able to handle the heat. And I think, like, if we had done that, if we had listened to what everyone was telling us that we had to do and had a little house in town, I don't think Jamie's recovery would have, he wouldn't be where he is now, because it was that driving thing to go out and to be out with the cattle. I remember the first time he came home from Sydney, and he wasn't down there very, very long. We were told we'd be down there for 12, 18 months, and I think we spent, was it 3-4 months down there all up? And because he just checked himself out and said, that's it, we're going home. And in hindsight, that was the best thing. You know, when he opened the car door and climbed out, and he didn't come in the house. He went straight up and saw his dogs and saw, the old bull and went and saw the other Brahmins, and that was it. There was just no stopping him. It was that drive, and I think that's sort of something for any country person that's got a property. It's that drive. It's not a choice. They've just got to. It's a part of who they are to go out and go to work each day, and what they get out of it is just as much as what they put in.
Absolutely. I want to turn a little bit. Resilience is something so many people have talked about over the last little while, but you guys are the absolute epitome of it, and then some, I think. Now, like you, whether it was raising money for the amputees, but also, Karen, your work now in the rural mental health space, like the last few years of the back of that drought, particularly in Western New South Wales, where you guys call home, has been pretty tough. And you put yourself, despite everything you've been through, you went out of your way to really help other people. Can you?
Yeah, I'm quite passionate about the fact that people are out there doing it tough, and I guess everyone's had a bit of a taste of what isolation is like in the city and how it affects them, but it's a part of country life, and it's probably more so now with COVID come in. There's the lack of events that are going on when the opportunities of people to actually get off the farm and come together in town have disappeared. In the past, I'm not condoning drink driving, but now with, we all recognise it's not the thing to do now, but it sort of stops people even more, like that going to the pub of a Friday night because they're like, well, I can't get home if I do that, so they just don't do it. So even all that's very isolating, and you add a couple of droughts and mice plagues and floods, and now everyone's got these fantastic looking crops, and then we have all this wet and how that affects everyone. It sort of was a really good space for me to go into, and I thought I could really make a difference to people out there, and since then I've gone on and now I work for Royal Flying Doctors, and I'm an alcohol and other drugs clinician, and get to go out and actually see people throughout our great Western New South Wales, and offer a bit of a friendly ear for them to talk to and help any way I can, which is
funny. Karen was never one that was, well, she socialised, but she was pretty shy. And then to see her in this role now, she just adapted to it and loves it. It's pretty eye-opening to me.
And really making a difference in...
Proud.
Really making a difference in other people's lives?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And other people she don't even know.
For people who aren't aware of like the challenges of Western New South Wales, what are some of those things that have kind of, come up out of it?
I guess it is... it's the challenges of what they've been through the last few years. There's been a lot of tough years, and it's almost seems to be one thing after another, and that almost, when are we going to get a break? Like, the drought, and then it rained, and then the mice come in, and then we've got a bit of a reprieve from the mice, but then it sort of rains, and a lot of people aren't going to get all their crops off, or cattle prices are through the roof, which is fantastic if you have cattle, but if you've not been able to make your way back into that market, that's a whole other thing. So yeah.
And in terms of, I think, well, for our listeners and people who follow Humans of Agriculture, they're kind of from all over, and it's really about kind of it's about the individual and helping people share their own story, but really highlighting the importance of that. So for you in both your life and your work, what's been the importance of building that network and that community around you to support you guys in good times, but also the rocky roads that have popped up?
It's a must. I mean, without Karen's support, I wouldn't have got to where I am here now. She had my back no matter what. And that's, I guess, what you're talking about, is having that community, close-knit community where you can watch each other's back and help them out.
Yeah, and I guess Jamie sort of spoke to you about it before, like Rodeo was such a big part of our life, and when we really needed them, they really stepped up and, helped us out, and that's
these
just...
people I'd only see on the weekend. It was how you going, mate? What's going on? 5-minute chat, and that was it. That's all you'd see them, you know. And some of them probably drove, I'm guessing, 400 or 500 k's to come to have that night there, you know.
Yeah.
And even that accident brought those people together, which is, you know, it's good.
And even, you know, there was a lot of people that we'd never even met, but just heard our story and wanted to help. So it was all pretty amazing.
So, yeah,
After, isn't it?
well, there was a goal in there around the horses that you set, Jamie, and one of them was just to get back on and ride, but you'd had your left leg amputated, your left arm, and Karen, had you started the horse training before this point?
I'd ridden horses as work, and, you know, I've always loved horses, but it was, I guess, the fact that I thought we really need to step up our horse sort of knowledge and horsemanship, and I was lucky enough to go to a clinic. Dan Steers out of Tamworth, he's part of the Double Dan horsemanship, and I guess that changed a lot of stuff for us and how I saw horses anyway, and they become a part of me staying well, I guess. And that time, even if it was 5 or 10 minutes of an afternoon of going and either feeding or rugging or moving horses, that time I spent with them just became so beneficial for me. And then the fact that I recognised how beneficial it was, and I think there's been quite a few afternoons where Jamie would say, "Can you just please go up and spend a bit of time with your horses?" Because you need to. And then I moved from thinking more about the groundwork sort of side of stuff than the ridden, which would been my main focus before, and moved on to doing a lot of liberty stuff with my horses. And I guess from there I just saw the benefit of that connection of really forming that great relationship with your horse and what it can do. And from there I would like to really go out and help other people with now, and get people that have even the access to horses to give them a few skills of how they can benefit more than just riding the horse, how we can have that connection.
It opened my mind up with Karen doing the liberty. I was one of the fellas that go out in the quad bike and run the horse in the yard, chuck a saddle on, and off you go. There's no real connection. It was just a tool for me, a work tool. Whereas Karen saw the other side of it, where let's work with them and get that connection happening, and so she can just walk out now and they pretty much come running up to her.
Yeah. I guess it's that challenge to think, okay, if I don't have even a rope or anything on my horse, how can I get it to do all this really cool stuff that I saw other people doing? And it's that time to actually just focus your thoughts onto, wow, overcoming that challenge and thinking outside the square of how does that happen.
And so, I'm not sure what liberty is. What is liberty, and you're talking about this connection and training the horse?
I guess it's just working with your horse and getting that communication going where you go, I want you to do this, and the horse says, sure, I'm more than happy to do that for you. And without that force or that,
Happy to do it.
That they just want to please you, I guess. And it's, how do you form that relationship?
Well, how do you?
A lot of hours and a lot of good communication. I think that's why it can be so beneficial for anyone to work out what communication is really doing. You know, what's your body language doing, and, you know, more than just the words that you're saying, and how we treat each other.
And that's not just with the horse, that's with everything.
It's letting someone know that they're being heard, I guess. Yeah, you see them, and whether that's part of my work, going out and saying, hey, I'm here just to listen to you. I'm here. I'm seeing you. I'm feeling what you're going through, and that in itself can make a big difference. If you give someone your time, or even, you know, with a horse, it's giving an animal at that time to say, hey, I feel you. I see you. I want to hear what you have to say, and, you know, I think it can make a huge difference in anyone's life. If you're out there trying to support someone, that enough is going to be a huge difference to them.
It's kind of the essence of connection, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so coming back to that and building connections, and a lot of people may not have heard your story, Jamie, but and also yours, Karen, which is absolutely incredible as well. And so I'm so glad that you came on and shared it. But for when you guys share your story and what you've been through, and potentially like one stranger out there, what someone might take from it, what would you guys hope that people may take from the story that you guys have shared?
Just not to give up. We've all got things, places we want to be, a nice house or whatever your goal is. Just because you have one hiccup doesn't mean your goal's over. You know, you can still get there. Actually, I went around with the State of Origin team to a few schools, talking to kids about their driving, because the 17, 18-year-old kids about to get their licence.
Yeah.
And from that was the reaction I got out of those kids. Just safe driving, abide by the rules, all that sort of thing. That was pretty touching to me. See the reaction of the kids.
Absolutely. And what about for you, Karen?
I don't know what my message is, but for me, my biggest lesson that we learnt, everything we've been through over the last, 7.5, 8 years, and it was I guess we learnt the lesson the hard way, is what people mean to you and the value of life. And our relationship it was always pretty fantastic, but now it's so much better every day, I think, when you looked at what life would have been like without Jamie, and like I had a lot of time in those 7-8 weeks to think about what is life going to be like without him. What's my kids' life going to be like growing up? Like, our kids were pretty young at the time. They were, I think, 12. So our eldest was just started high school. So 12, 10 and 4. And, they're young, and you think, it just makes you value life like you've never valued it before, and appreciate people. And, we sort of tell each other what we, that how much we mean to each other. And, if I could give anyone a gift, it would be knowing what we know now, and, how precious life is, and it's to be lived, and, make the most of it.
I think that ties in so well, and I need to ask the question because we ask it on every podcast. But in terms of if you guys had the chance to go in and talk to a class of Year 10 students, they're 16-year-olds, what would be your advice to them about pursuing a career in agriculture and regional Australia, and what it could provide to them?
I think, especially at this point in time now, like there's so much opportunity in agriculture. The meat industry's booming. Grain's it'll probably be booming after this harvest, I think. But there's just so many opportunities, and there seems to be a lot of young kids coming into that agricultural life too. It's a good way of life.
Yeah, and mine would probably be, just don't think you have to lock something in and make the right decision. Just get out there and do something, like whether it's going up north and working on a station, or going anywhere and just getting your foot in the door, and then you never know where life's going to lead you. I think we've found that too. It's just ever-changing.
Get out and go. Get what you're after in life.
Thank you so much for sitting down and sharing with us, Jamie and Karen. I've loved this conversation. I feel pretty emotional at times as well.
You reckon you have? You bring back old memories. I pushed that aside for a bit.
No, well, thank you so much for being so honest and vulnerable as well. It's incredible. Thank you.
No, thank you.